every Monday we would play skip bow. What Grandma would say would be skip boo. That's all I have to say.
That was important.
Yep. Elaborate on what Mihaila just said, because for many years my wife and I would drive up and be with Mom and Fred, and of course we'd play skip boo with gusto, believe me. In fact, Fred was really, you would not believe this, but he was quite competitive.
Yeah.
And every once in a while he would just take over and just cream us. And then I never thought it would be possible, but he would just sit there and chuckle and giggle to himself, you know. And it was really funny when we finally brought out of him this new phase of enjoyment. He seemed to really enjoy the game, so that was fun. But Fred, he worked very hard to take care of my mom, and we appreciated that very much, because if he hadn't been there, you know, she wouldn't have been able to stay up there on the mountain. She loved being up there working with her flowers, and she planted like 300 trees up there, and she was able to take care of them. He took care of the dogs and the cats and everything else up there, and so he was appreciated for all the work that he did. I'm trying to think of some other interesting. I was able to go up there nearly every Monday after my mom died, and just to check on him and make sure things were going okay. And sometimes his phone would be out, and so I would call and no answer. I'd go, oh no, something's wrong, and I'd dash up there and bang on the door, and he would say, come on in, you know, and he was just always there. But that the last few weeks were really tough on him. He had gone downhill quite a bit, and we're so grateful for Becky, for Mike, for taking him home and taking care of him, putting him in hospice. We really appreciate the care that they gave to Fred. I'm hoping that Evelyn will say a few words, because I think she knows some things that we don't know about Fred, and maybe she has some memories. So I will encourage her. I'm not forcing her, but I'm really grateful she's here. I've heard so much about his niece, you know, but I've never met her or seen her, so I'm hoping that she will be able to say a couple of words anyway. Anyway, that's all I had.
Just a side note, I do remember after you mentioned cards,
yeah.
I think he was also a poker player.
Oh yeah.
They used to go to jackpot at first,
yes,
and then Mom kind of cut that off. But she would make the once annual trip for a while.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I remember when they first got together, Fred had his dog, his little white dog, and
Ginger.
Skipper. Yeah, I think it was
Skipper.
called Skipper. Anyway, he valued that dog. He protected it from Big Sarge and
I remember.
and all of the crazy grandkids. Absolutely. So they love their dogs. And then Ellen, unbeknownst to anybody, took a couple of cats up there, and they just adopted Fred. And I tell you, he was.
Disappeared when you went.
I know.
I didn't even know they had cats.
I know. But anyway, he loved cats. In fact, in the very end, he invited another stray cat to come and join him, and couldn't get rid of that one either. So, but he did love the cats. Anyway.
Well, I didn't just take cats up there. She asked me to. When she met Oreo, my cat, then she wanted 2 cats. So
Sit down. Boo Boo and
Sissy.
Sissy. Boo Boo and Sissy. Yeah, that's right.
And I was also instructed to get rid of them when he thought he was moving into that apartment.
Yep. Yep, he never forgave you for that.
Yeah, I didn't want to.
Oh.
Even I heard that one.
Yeah, that's right. Crazy Ellen. Anyway. Anybody else would like to?
Okay, Chris,
No, where are you?
Hang on. We got.
Rock, paper, scissors. Okay. I already know I'm gonna cry, and I hate crying. So. Talk now. Let's talk really fast. Okay.
Nope. Talk loud.
Okay, so obviously as one of the great grandchildren,
One of the greatest.
the greatest of the great grandchildren. Just kidding.
Mine is here too.
It's okay. I have the great ones now. Grandpa Fred was always the grandpa that I remembered as a kid and was around, and one of the things, well, my mom and I were just kind of talking about things that we remember. Some of the things stood out, like obviously he was always there to take care of Grandma, and how grateful I am that she was able to stay on her beloved mountain, because we knew as soon as she came down from that mountain she was gonna go, because she was not about it. But I'm just grateful for him that he was able to serve her like that. And I also just remember some funny things. I was briefly very scared of him because he came out and showed us a jar full of rattlesnake rattles, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so scary, there's so many rattlesnakes up here, and there wasn't, because he got rid of them all. So I always thought of him as like silent but deadly, because he got rid of all the rattlesnakes, and he would always just smoke us at Skip Boo. So
Skip Boo.
And I'm just grateful that he was able to be part of our family. And my son, he's 4, but when I told him, he had just been over at my mom's house and had seen Grandpa Fred, and he knew that obviously he wasn't doing well, and that it was important that we needed to take care of him and be quiet so he can get his rest and respect his little bubble. And when I told him, he goes, I'm like, Kai, you know, Grandpa Fred just went to heaven. And he goes, well, that's sad, but it will be okay, because we will see him again because of Jesus. And I was like, it's important to remember that and just always have him in our hearts, because he was such a big part of our family and my childhood, and I just love him dearly. And say this. What am I saying? I was about to be like, in the name of Jesus Christ, amen. And I was like, what am I even talking about? Okay, anyway, that's all.
Steve, is Chris back there?
Okay, so one memory that I have actually involves Jordan's kid, Kai.
I don't know.
We were up there for Fred's birthday one year, and Kai was just a baby, and he had just started learning how to crawl. And Kai he would sit there, get up on just his arms and scoot himself forward like a worm. And Kai and Fred was actually in the background in his chair, sitting there laughing the whole time that Kai's sitting there learning how to crawl. And I was like, wow, I've never heard this guy laugh before. But it was actually kind of funny, because you know, just enjoying being around him, you know. So, but I've also known Fred as a hard worker too, and we would ask, "Hey, Fred, do you need anything done?" Yes, and he would come out, do a little bit of light work with us. But yeah, I always just thought it was funny to hear him laugh. Yeah. It was always good to have him laugh. So
yeah.
So.
Thank you.
I just remember coming over to Becky's house, and he was
And your mom.
Your mother.
My mother's house, and coming in and just wanted to chit chat with him for a little bit, and coming in, and the first thing I said to him was, Fred, I can't believe that you let Becky get you off this mountain. And he just turned and looked at me, and he was like, she took me. I was like, that's all I need to those two love that mountain, and they were dead set on coming down. I don't blame them. That's one of my favorite places to go. It's a beautiful place. It's got a beautiful presence because of those two. So, and you know, Fred helping keep that a nice place for us all. It's a really special place in my heart. So.
Thanks, Coop.
I think one of the things that I will probably always remember right when he was in Becky's house and we went over to him, and I walked in the room and just said hi to Fred, and he was just, I mean, it wasn't long after this point that he couldn't really do much of anything, but he turned his head and he looked at me and he just got this big smile, and I think he tried to say hi, but he couldn't really vocalize very well. And it's just that he looked and he just got this big smile seeing me, and it just, I don't think I'll ever forget that, how much he appreciated me coming to see him.
Thanks, Josh.
Well, they ignored me when I went.
You were that cat stealer.
You were one of the three enemies.
I don't think he had his hearing aid in. I was yapping away, and then Becky comes in. Oh, I think I forgot your hearing aid.
Oh, she did. She gave this huge, long speech to him, and I said, he doesn't have his hearing aids in.
Do it again. Do it again.
Very good. I tried. She wouldn't do it.
Well, Becky, do you have any memories?
Well, I mean,
you have the most, I'm sure.
You probably do.
Yeah. I don't like the spotlight though.
Oh my gosh, you live for it.
Okay. You live for that. That's your personal.
I mean, I'm getting older and I don't like it so much these days. But I think that Brett and I had a very unique relationship. My kids, I think, can attest to that because of how involved they were in his life. And I mean, I have so many stories. When I would go up and help Grandma and Fred as they got older, and I would go up and help them do things, there were times I would sit on the couch or sit on the swing with Grandma. And Ellen and I were talking about this, Aunt Ellen and I were talking about this, and we're talking about how Grandma would always take these breaks, and we were always like, we stop, we're not gonna keep going. What happened? Oh, did it? I wonder if I ran out of time. It's only, oh, sorry guys, bye. I don't know how to, we'll just send them what we have thus far.
Sure.
But Grandma and I would sit and we would have conversations, and those were some of my most favorite memories, being able to just sit up there with them. And we were talking about how she was always taking breaks, and if we would have stopped, we would have been like, okay, we're done. Bye. My bones start to say no more. But Ellen and I were talking about it, and we were talking about how with Grandma's heart condition, she would have to take those breaks. She would go, she'd get winded, she'd have to take the breaks. And
she'd always make us sit with her.
She always wanted us to sit with her. And some of the times we would, sometimes I wouldn't. I would just keep going at least. And I remember there were so many times where Grandma and she would be telling Grandpa Fred, do this, do that, and he would just grumble. And he would just grumble all the way doing it, all the way back. Why do we need to do this? Why? And Grandma's like, you just do.
Can't do it.
I said so. And I just remember some of the times Grandpa Fred would get so mad because I would go and I would help him do stuff. And in the process of that, I would also see his weaknesses, his diseases coming out. And I don't think, like, we just think, oh, you know, Grandma, Grandpa, they helped each other take care of the land, but it was very difficult for Grandpa Fred to do a lot of this stuff, and he didn't really advertise it because Grandma was bossy and told him what to do. And I would remember seeing his vulnerabilities and seeing his diseases and seeing him being exhausted, and I just kept thinking, you know, here you've got these two great people that together make such a great unit because they can get stuff done together. And I remember Grandpa Fred would just be grouchy and mad, and he would just snap at her and she would just not care. And I remember she would say, oh, that man, I blah blah blah, I can't stand that, and da da da. And then she would always, no matter how upset she was with him, she would always say, but I married him for a reason. And there were some true, genuine feelings there, and it went both ways. And being able to see that in a later relationship, and Grandma has Leland, who we all know is the love of her life. But there definitely was room for more. And I saw that with her genuine care for Fred. And I saw that in his caring for her, and it was very much a two-way street, and I'm just so grateful for that example. I think that we've lost so much of that true companionship and the reason why you make it work, the reason why you stay together. And when Grandma passed, there's a reason I was glad that I was not here when she passed, because I don't know if emotionally I could have been there through the process. So to those that were, I appreciate it. But when Grandpa Fred, when we went up and we saw him, it was inevitable. We knew it was time for him to have some care. Whether I went up to the mountains or came down, just because I was qualified to do it. And just so you all know, that's not like, I'm not advertising that I have a truck and I can help you move. I know how to take care of you in your dying times. Not the case.
Just speed dial Becky whenever it comes time.
No, please no. But when we brought him, like when we got to that point, and I had to bring him down, we had to bring him down. Because of everything that him and Grandma have done for me, for my kids, it was really hard. It was watching the people you love and watching them and knowing that you're going to lose them selfishly. It's hard because you just think they're always going to be there. And I remember he was fighting it and fighting it. And there were 2 days that neither one of us had slept because of the congestive heart failure and the phlegm and everything, and he was up hacking all night. And I just am such a worrier that I would make sure I was up taking care of him every minute. And for 2 days we didn't sleep. And finally I just said, I gotta get some sleep, Grandpa, I'm exhausted. And I said, and if I'm exhausted, I'm not even doing the work. You're the one hacking and coughing, and you have got to be beyond exhausted. And I said, and I have the ability and I know what needs to be done to take care of you and to help you feel better. And Grandma would kick my butt if I didn't do what I know to do. And so I said, I want to give you these meds. I explained both of them to him and said what they would do. And he finally was like, okay. But if I don't like him, I'm not taking him in the morning. I'm like, that is fine. Let's just get some sleep. But watching that change, watching his demeanor change from realizing that, because he'd just been angry at family, angry at us. He was just an angry person. Always felt like he was gonna have nothing. And when he realized, you could see him realize that he had so much. And you could see the change in him. And you could see him soften. And I think that that was probably the most amazing gift I could get, is seeing that. And it just makes me appreciate my parents, my grandparents more. And what a gift to be able to take care of him in his last couple of weeks. And I have an amazing boyfriend who took one for the team and opened the house up, even though he's like, this is super weird, and I'm not okay with this. But that was just there. And as far as like some stories that I wanted to, one of the stories I wanted to share, just because I blame Fred for it. But I have millions of stories I could share, but when Dad and I went up Wednesday to take him to his doctor's appointment, I got up there and immediately, I don't know how many times we all went up and thought he was already dead, but we got up there and I remember going, okay, getting him to get food was not, it just wasn't going to happen. And I realized that we were not going to have enough time to get him to the doctor. And so me being me, I'm like, okay, these are the things we need to do. I'm like, Dad, you sit here when you do this. And I had grandbabies who, that was a very interesting 2 weeks, because I had the grandbabies a lot and they learned a lot. Because when we first went up, they were like, why are we going up here to this place? And I'm like, because Grandpa and Grandpa are stuck and we need to help them. But as we're doing this, I'm like, I gotta call the doctor's office and figure out what to do. And my kids have heard this story because, well, it's funny. But Grandpa's sitting in there and he's trying to eat and drink some stuff. And I'm like, okay, I gotta make a phone call. I go to pick up the phone, the one that never works. The battery was not working. The phone was completely not working. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, I need a phone. Cell phones don't work. And Dad's kind of like trying to fill in and help. And I just thought, I don't know, how am I going to do this? How am I going to call? And then Grandpa Fred's like, the phone's in Lois's room. I'm like, oh, that's right. So I go in and I'm like, I go to grab the phone and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this.
It's a rotary phone.
And what I'm like, I don't know how to do this. Okay, oh yeah, I remember. So you got to do this, and so I pick it up, and I don't know if anyone ever used that phone up there, but it rattles. It's got a constant rattle. Another joke from Grandpa Fred on me. But he'd set me in there because he knew the phone was there, and I'm like, okay, I can dial this phone. I dial the phone, and then I'm listening, and it's like, hello, blah 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 blah. Press 1 for this. Press 2 for this. Press pound for this, and I'm like,
there are no buttons.
And at this point, I'm just standing in there, and I'm like, it's like an out-of-body experience, and I was like looking at myself going, what is happening? I got my dad, who is not a caregiver, taking care of Grandpa, trying. I got grandbabies over here going, Gigi, can we have this? Can we have that? And I'm standing here on a rotary phone.
They want you to push a button.
And they want me to push a button to talk to anybody, and I'm just like, I'm just going to stand here, trapped in this little box, because it doesn't go anywhere. And I just remember thinking, after the fact, I remember thinking, you know, he knew that phone was in there. He sent me in there to be trapped in that little box. Joke's on me. But we ended up obviously getting everything squared away, and he came down, and the assessment was that they couldn't do hospice up there. So when I told him that he had to stay here with me, he was like, I want to go home. He did. He wanted to go home. He said he wanted to go home, and then I said, that just can't happen. And I...
Or is that the gas?
Maybe we're back on. I have no idea.
I texted him, said we'll send him a copy.
They've been in my pockets.
Of the recording that Steve's making.
There's a bunch of people there.
As we're talking about trolling the
right? I'm like, who's talking? But
Go ahead.
just there's a lot of things that I wish I would have known more about him, but he was such a private person that we got what we got. But I'll take that. And then as I got to meet Evelyn, his niece, and see kind of where he came from and hear some of the stories, it just makes me appreciate him even more. And the things that he's taught my kids, the way he's interacted with me. We've had our moments where he's told me to go away, and then as soon as that happened, he regretted it and wanted me to come back, and we made amends. But you can't, like, you just love him. When they finally did say he didn't want to go to the room because I said, I have a room for you, and he didn't want to go to the room because that meant he was staying. And there were a couple things that happened, and it's a pride thing, being changed by your granddaughter. And that was hard for him the first time, and then after that, because I kept him clean because he had gone for weeks not clean. He was just he was okay with it after the first or second time. He allowed me to do that, and pride thing, that's a hard thing to do, but being able to see him soften and being able to see him truly miss Grandma, it just shows me that there's so much more. Advantage of all your moments and live in the now. And I think he may have missed out on some of that, and I think he knew that. And in conversations, that was kind of the takeaway, because he did see, he wasn't one to say I'm sorry, but he was definitely one to say I shouldn't have done that. And I think that was his way of acknowledging he wished he could have done things better. And I think we all can. We all wish we could do things a little bit better. And I think the takeaway is just don't live with regrets. Live in the now. Enjoy your moments. And this generation and the baby boomers, our parents' generation, there's just so much to learn from them. I think that the times are changed. I think that there's definitely a shift in how our children are raised. I think there's a respect thing in the stories that they tell, and I just advise everyone and hope you will take advantage of your opportunities that you get with.
Was Fred's only brother, and Uncle Fred was 7 years older than my father was. But Becky and I talked for an hour and a half last night on the phone and have never met, so we had lots to say.
Very Gabby girls.
I can tell you for a fact that besides Lois, you knew him better than anyone, possibly even more than his mother did. You have ended up taking the place that I wanted in my uncle's life. And I love you so much for being able to give him back and to show him there was a whole lot more of a life than being a loner. There were times that I was growing up that I really didn't know who my uncle was. He was just part of the family. You made him what he is. Between you and Grandma, you gave him that life. And you're right, that was the gift that you received for it. And I want you to always remember that. You're the one that did it. Thank you.
As we've kind of mentioned, I think you guys, in fact, I know from what I knew of it, my husband and I hadn't been married that long before Uncle Fred and Aunt Lois got married. So, and then in 1993, the family kind of became estranged. And in September of 2019, Uncle Fred showed back up at the house. And I welcomed him back with open arms. And I think, as Becky said, he knew he'd made a mistake. and he needed to make amends for it because there were only 3 children in the family, and that's from my father. There's a brother that's 2 years younger, and my younger sister died 20 years ago with colon cancer, so there's only just the 2 of us left. Most of the rest of the family, there is 1 cousin in Nampa that I'm aware of, but almost everybody else is gone. And from listening to what Becky had to say, from even what Darlene had mentioned, and when I did have a chance, I tried to call Uncle Fred about once a month to visit with him. Yeah. Yeah? Yeah? No, I didn't do that. No, I didn't do that. Okay, I'm a talker, as Becky figured out. I hate one-sided conversations. But I still tried to make sure that I called once a month. And in December, his phone quit. I'd already steeled myself for what could be coming at that point, not knowing if anybody was going to contact me to let me know what had happened. Still kind of angry with him, I guess. And then I did talk to him about 3 weeks ago, and it was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was still at work. And he said, I just woke up. And I said, you what? He said, I just woke up. He said, I've been sleeping a lot. All right, well, I won't keep you, but no, I'm thinking of you. And those were our last words. But after visiting with Becky, I'm okay with that, because she was there to give him the love and support, the comfort that I know I would have. I do want to tell you, though, Becky, I'm not too sure I want to meet his mother later on, because she'd have kicked your butt right along with it. It wouldn't have been just Grandma. His mother would have gotten you too. Good. In listening to some of the stories and things, there was a lot more of a personality of his mother there than what I had realized. As I mentioned to Becky several times last night, when you're young, your perception of life or what is being said and done is quite different when you're a lot older. So I want to say thank you so much for giving him a family, making him accept that, letting him have memories and times to know what a family was. Because with us, he always kind of stood apart. Becky said, what are your memories? Uncle Fred was sitting there in the chair. He didn't ever really talk. He knew he was loved. I know that. But his brother's been gone for, actually next month will be 30 years that my dad's been gone. So he hadn't had a brother to be with for quite some time. So I really want to say thank you to every one of you for being his family that he kind of shied away from us from, so that I know at least he had that when he left, knowing what a real family was.
Well, now you're part of our family too.
And I couldn't be more welcome than what you guys have welcomed me. So I thank you all very much for being part of that family.
Thank you.
It was, I don't know, years ago, and it was at a family reunion, and Susan and I were sitting off, talking away, yakking away, blah, blah, blah. And here comes Becky and what's his face, and all of a sudden Fred leaps out of his chair and this biggest smile on his face, and he's headed for Becky and hugging her, and Susan and I looked at each other and said, we never did that for us. But we never had that relationship like Becky had with him, so I thought that was really kind of cool that I'd never seen Fred jump up and run to give them a hug, and it was pretty cool.
A couple of years he hasn't trusted himself driving like he used to, and I know this, especially this last few months, I think he only got out of there once. That was to go pick up that prescription.
Anyway, the reason I say that, for the last couple of years, as we would go to the dump, we'd go in the spring and in the fall. And the last couple of years, he asked that I drive. And then And then last fall, when he tried to get in the pickup, I thought I was going to have to help him, but just before I got out of the pickup to go around, he did make it in the pickup. So he was having a little trouble then because of his weakness. And at the same time, I knew he couldn't climb up a hill, so we had to do some adjustments for that. So I think he kind of knew that he was going to go. And the other thing I'd like to express too is and go along with what Evelyn said. Becky and Jeff need to be thanked for what they did this last couple of weeks. I was able to see the care that Fred was given at the last, so I've seen that up close. I think Fred will be pleased with the service that was rendered to him in this last couple of weeks. We'll let it go at that. Now, what we'll do is we'll have Steve give the grave dedication, and then I'll have an announcement